Are you a worrier? And if so, how do we fix that problem? I have recently been learning about the brain. As we know, I've been studying religiously for the last 2 years now. And I'm really diving deep into habitual thinking patterns and kind of how these types of things work. On top of all the psychology stuff that I've been studying as well. So, I want to use worrying for an example here, but this can go for any different type of thinking. If there's something that you find yourself in a similar state in a lot of cases, then this would apply to that as well. But for this example of this video, I will use worrying. So if you are someone who worries quite often, I want you to ask yourself this question. If the event, now, if you're, first of all, if you're currently, if you're a worrier, I'm assuming you're currently worrying about something or an event, and it's quite possible that that event is something worth worrying about. So I'm not going to discredit the importance of what it is that you're worrying about. But what I want you to ask yourself is, if this event, if I was not worrying about this event, is there a possibility that I would find myself worrying about something else? And you can answer this question by looking in the past about this type of thinking that you may have. Because a lot of us who may be a worrier are kind of have an idea that we are that type of person and that we think that way. So you probably have an idea already, or maybe just now it's clicking in where it's, you might be thinking, well, it's kind of strange that I consistently have something important to worry about. Even if it is something that is important, worth worrying about, if it seems like it's just one event after another, then there might be a different discussion here that we should have about it being something different than the event itself. And what else it could be and what else it likely is your habitual thinking pattern that you've adopted over the years. And many of us have these patterns, and it can be thinking patterns in many different ways. Worrying is just a good example, where it's not actually the event for the reason why we're worrying. It's actually our habitual way of thinking in general that we're kind of in this state a lot of times. And I talked about this in a video a while back, or I talked about how we tend to live somewhere emotionally, and we can live in more than one place, but it's a place that we tend to go to quite often because we are comfortable there. It doesn't have to be necessarily a good place for us. It can be, it may not be helpful for us, but we may assume that it's good for us because we find comfort there. So even if it's not serving us, if it's a place of living in worry, it gives us comfort knowing that we're familiar with this place. And we live in this place because this is our habitual way of thinking. So you can ask yourself, is this event, whether or not it is worth worrying about, that's not the case here, but am I always worrying about events? And if so, then I'm a worrier. And the way that we fix this problem is, first of all, understanding, okay, this is the type of person I am, with self-awareness, and then actually addressing the real problem. Because if we think the problem is the event that's happening that we're worried about, we can fix the event, and we will. And as we've learned in the past by doing this, that we then find another event. And we're going to find another event and another event and another event and another event, and you're going to be worrying for the rest of your life. Or you're going to be, have negative thoughts about this in a way, whatever the thinking pattern may be. So once we realize that, okay, this is not necessarily the event that's taking place, but more so my way of thinking, we can then work to focus on changing the habitual thinking pattern that we have, which is very straightforward. It's most of the power here in putting in this work and fixing this problem is simply being aware of what the problem is. And that is not the event that we have that's taking place. It's our way of thinking. So once we realize this and we realize, okay, yes, we can fix this event, but then we have to fix, the next event, but there really is no ending to this loop of thinking that we find ourselves in until we address the fact that, okay, this is the way that I think, and it's a thinking pattern that I have that may not necessarily serve me. I don't think worrying serves people in 99.9% of the cases. But then we can realize this, okay, this is my, here are my thought patterns. I'm aware of this. Now we can start to address it by whatever it is, that current place that you're worrying now. Worrying doesn't do much. We can, it doesn't help us 99% of the time. Maybe not 99, but a very large percentage of the time, the things we worry about never actually happen. So if this is a case you find yourself in, fixing the event is not the problem. Fixing the event so you no longer worry about it. It's addressing the mindset that you have and bringing awareness to your habitual thinking pattern, and then that's the first step into changing the pattern. And then once we do that, we can look at the event and we can say, okay, the event is fine. The event is neutral, as we know I've been sharing in the last few recent videos. But I need to start thinking differently about this. And then as we can start shifting our perspective from that point. But the first step in, if you're a worrier, to stop being a worrier is to address it for what it is. And it's not these events that keep coming up on an ongoing basis. It's your habitual thinking patterns that we need to look at. So I hope you find this helpful. I can dig in a bit deeper with any of you who want to talk about this. If this is you, something that you deal with, it's very powerful for you to hear this, to just associate, okay, I'm a worrier. It goes, a little bit deeper to this is a habitual thinking pattern, as opposed to me just needing to fix event after event after event. Because essentially you're going to be worried for the rest of your life unless you fix what the real problem is, which is disguised as these events, but really it's just your way of thinking about them. So once we are able to shed light on what the actual problem is, the problem is very easy to fix. And a lot of times this is the case where it's just the event is disguised, the problem is disguised for something that it may not be, so we're not going about addressing the correct problem. It's not that the problem is necessarily hard to address, it's that we're not addressing the right one. So once we dig in a little bit to self-awareness and say, okay, I do find myself having these thoughts that clearly do not serve me, we can then look at what the actual problem is and start working on solving it. Hope that's helpful. Talk to you later. Bye.